Good morning. My name is Dan Scripps, Chair of the Michigan Public Service Commission. I call this meeting of the Commission to order on September 10th, 2020 at 10:30 a.m. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chair Scripps.
Present.
Commissioner Talberg.
Present.
Commissioner Phillips.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We are holding this meeting using Microsoft Live Event. It is compatible with all browsers except Safari. Telephone relay service is available through the phone option. During this meeting, we will call out participant names before speaking to support those listening only by phone or using the relay service. As indicated in the notice for today's meeting, if we lose connection, the Commission will be in recess. We will attempt to reestablish a connection, but if we are unable to do so within 30 minutes, we will adjourn. Decisions made prior to the disconnection will be binding. All other business will be handled at a future meeting. We will not recess or adjourn due to technical issues experienced by individual members of the public. The meeting will be recorded and available for future reference on the Commission's website. In addition, the Commissioners can receive comment via mpsc_commissioners@michigan.gov. For reference, this email is also included in the Q&A feature of the live stream event on your computer and in the meeting notice. If you have intermittent internet service, you should consider listening to the meeting via telephone, not the computer. So if there is an interruption, you can avoid missing part of the meeting. Another option is to watch the meeting through your internet service with the sound muted, and then listen to the audio from your phone. Please keep in mind the video feed has a slight delay, while the telephone line is in real time. We will have an opportunity for the public to make comment as provided in the agenda. A few notes about this. Comments should be limited to one per person and can be made verbally or by calling in, or in writing via the live stream Q&A feature. If you are participating via Teams application, you can use the Q&A feature and type your comments in the box anytime during our meeting, and we will have those queued up to read. The Q&A function should be used to request technical assistance or to submit public comments directed to the Commission. If you would like to make verbal comments, you must call into the meeting by phone. And finally, to minimize disruptions, attendees will be muted until we reach the time for public comment. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda for today's meeting. I recognize Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I move for the approval of the agenda for today's Commission meeting.
Commissioner Talberg.
Second.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a roll call vote on the motion to approve today's agenda. Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Talberg.
Aye.
I also vote in favor of the motion. The motion carries by unanimous vote. The agenda is approved. The next item of business on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the August 20th, 2020 Commission meeting. Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I move for the approval of the minutes from the August 20th, 2020 Commission meeting.
Commissioner Talberg.
Second.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a roll call vote on the motion to approve the minutes from the August 20, 2020 Commission meeting. Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Talberg.
Aye.
I also vote in favor of the motion. The motion carries by unanimous vote. The Commission meeting minutes of August 20, 2020 are approved. The next item of business on the agenda is approval of the orders on the consent agenda. Today, the Commission is assisted by Staff Attorney Leah Arndt. I recognize Ms. Arndt.
Good morning. Today's consent agenda consists of 4 communications matters, 3 electric matters, and 1 gas matter. I note for the record that the minute action in FERC docket number ER20-2591 is an electric matter and not a gas matter. The proposed orders and minute actions for these matters have been thoroughly vetted by the Commission's technical and legal staff and are ready for your approval.
Thank you, Ms. Arndt. I recognize Commissioner Phillips.
I move for the approval of the orders and the minute actions on the consent agenda.
Commissioner Talberg.
Second.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a roll call vote on the motion to approve the orders and minute actions on the consent agenda. Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Talberg.
Aye.
I also vote in favor of the motion. The motion carries by unanimous vote. The orders and minute actions on the consent agenda are approved. Ms. Arndt.
Item 4A1 is case number U-20840, which involves the application by Wind Telephone Company, doing business as Wind Telecom, to expand the geographic scope of its license to provide basic local exchange service. The order before you approves the license expansion.
Commissioner Phillips?
Thank you, Chairman. I move for the approval of the order in case number U-20848. 840, my apologies.
Thank you, Commissioner Phillips. Commissioner Tallberg?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a roll call vote on the motion to approve the order. Commissioner Phillips?
Aye.
Commissioner Tallberg?
Aye.
I also vote in favor of the motion. The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-20840 is approved. Ms. Arndt?
Item 4B1 is case numbers U-18349 et al., which involve an application and amended application by Indiana Michigan Power Company requesting ex parte approval of modifications to its voluntary green pricing program and approval of 2 new options in its IM Green program tariff. The order before you approves the amended application.
I recognize Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I move for the approval of the order in case number U-818349 et al.
Commissioner Tallberg?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a roll call vote on the motion to approve the order. Commissioner Phillips?
Aye.
Commissioner Tallberg?
Aye.
I also vote in favor of the motion. The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case numbers U-18349 et al. is approved. Ms. Arndt?
Item 4B2 is case number U-20591, which involves an application by Indiana Michigan Power Company for approval of its integrated resource plan pursuant to MCL 460.6T and for other relief. Staff member Jill Rusnick will describe this order.
Good morning, Commissioners. Public Act 341 of 2016 requires all rate-regulated utilities to submit Integrated Resource Plans, IRPs, for Michigan Public Service Commission review and approval. An IRP is a plan that outlines an electric utility's future resource strategy, how the electric utility will provide reliable, cost-effective electric service to its customers while addressing the risks and uncertainties inherent in the electric utility industry. To approve an IRP, the Commission must find the plan represents the most reasonable and prudent means of meeting the electric utility's energy and capacity needs. On August 14, 2019, Indiana Michigan Power Company, I&M, filed an application with supporting testimony and exhibits in case number U-20591. 5 intervening parties plus Commission staff participated in the proceeding. On October 7, 2019, the Commission held a public hearing in Benton Harbor, Michigan. On August 19, 2020, the parties filed a settlement agreement resolving all issues in the case. The settlement provides the withdrawal of I&M's IRP in this case, given the uncertainty around I&M's current circumstances and the timing of the conclusion of the proceeding. Other highlights of the settlement agreement include I&M will file its next IRP for approval with the Commission on or before December 15, 2021, and will hold a stakeholder process for interested persons to participate, with at least one stakeholder meeting in its Michigan service territory. One stakeholder workshop will be dedicated to energy efficiency and demand response. I&M will work with stakeholders to define modeling inputs for the IRP. I&M's energy waste reduction targets will be determined through its plan cases until the approval of the next IRP. I&M also plans to conduct a market potential study specific to its Michigan service territory to be used in evaluating energy waste reduction potential. I&M will also collaborate in the Lower Peninsula Market Potential Study and provide data to be used in the study. I&M will participate in the Commission's My Power Grid Competitive Procurement Work Group. I&M will commit to not extend the lease of its Rockport Unit 2 coal plant prior to receiving pre-approval from the Commission. Lastly, I&M will include the results of a competitive bid process for all new energy resources, including qualifying facilities and utility scale options, as part of its next IRP, and will provide a draft request for proposal to parties in this case for review and comment. The conclusion of this case finalizes the first round of IRP cases filed with the Commission. The order before you approves the uncontested settlement agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rusnak. Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Rusnak, for the presentation this morning. I move for the approval of the order in case number U-20591.
Commissioner Tallberg.
Second.
A few comments before we vote. First, as Ms. Rusnak noted, today's order represents the last of the first round of integrated resource plans required under the bipartisan energy reforms enacted in 2016. The process of developing the planning parameters and filing requirements, and the work staff and others put into effectuating these statutory changes, the development of the integrated resource plans themselves, including the public meetings held by utilities that informed plan elements, and the review of the plans by staff and other interveners as part of the formal plan cases, have contributed to a more open and transparent process of long-term planning, and I think the state and our residents are better off for it, particularly given the changes taking place in the energy landscape here in Michigan and indeed nationally and globally. It is worth noting that this case differs from the others in that the settlement agreement approved today does not approve Indiana Michigan's plan. Instead, the company is withdrawing its application, agrees to a number of provisions included in the settlement agreement and outlined in Ms. Rusnak's presentation, and agrees to file a new integrated resource plan not later than December 15th of next year. Given the unique circumstances involved in the case, this is the most appropriate path forward, and the order before us approves the settlement agreement in this case. That said, the uncertainty around future generation plans that led Indiana and Michigan Power to withdraw their integrated resource plan is inherent in the energy landscape. Indeed, one of the major drivers for the establishment of the IRP process by the legislature in 2016 was to encourage long-range planning in the midst of the energy transition, to evaluate options and model a range of scenarios, and then propose a way forward even in these uncertain times. None of us knows exactly what the future will hold, which makes this type of planning all the more critical, in effort to determine as best as we can the most reasonable and prudent means of meeting the electric utility's energy and capacity needs in a way that appropriately balances a range of factors. My hope is that the plan to be filed by I&M not later than December 15th of next year, and for that matter all future integrated resource plan cases, will fully consider the uncertainties inherent in energy planning and propose a plan that meets the statutory requirements and the intent of the legislature in creating this planning process. I want to thank the Commission staff, utilities, and other interveners in this and the other IRP cases for their work in finishing this first round of integrated resource planning cases. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll now have a roll call vote on the motion to approve the order. Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Tallberg.
Aye.
I also vote in favor of the motion. The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-20591 is approved. Ms. Arndt, back to you.
Item 4B3 is case number U-20747, which is a matter on the Commission's own motion requesting comments on interim issues in the implementation of Section 6X of Public Act 341 of 2016. The order before you provides Commission feedback in response to the comments received and closes the docket.
Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I move for the approval of the order in case number U-20747.
Commissioner Tallberg.
Second.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a roll call vote on the motion to approve the order. Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Tallberg.
Aye.
I also vote in favor of the motion. The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-20747 is approved. Ms. Arndt.
Item 4B4 is case number U-20884, which involves an application filed by Upper Peninsula Power Company for an extension of its current waiver from the meter reading rule and certain rules addressing meter testing. The order before you grants the requested extension.
Commissioner Phillips.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-20884.
Commissioner Tallberg.
Second.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a roll call vote on the motion to approve the order. Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Tallberg.
Aye.
I also vote in favor of the motion. The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-20884 is approved. Ms. Arndt.
Item 4C1 is case number U-20650, which involves an application filed by Consumers Energy Company for authority to increase its rates for the distribution of natural gas and for other relief. Staff member Jill Rusnick will describe this order.
Good morning, Commissioners. On December 16, 2019, Consumers Energy Gas Company, CE Gas, filed an application seeking authority to increase rates, amend its rate schedules, obtain approval of certain accounting matters, and modify certain terms and conditions of providing natural gas service. The request included an increase in revenue requirement of $245 million, which the company modified in rebuttal to approximately $229 million, with a projected test year of October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021. As justification for the proposed rate increase, CE Gas presented evidence on the need for natural gas system investments and increased costs to the company in several areas, such as operations and maintenance, financing, and environmental response activities. The proceeding drew significant interest with intervention by the Association of Businesses Advocating Tariff Equity, the Michigan Department of Attorney General, Citizens Utility Board of Michigan, Energy Michigan, Lansing Board of Water and Light, Michigan State University, Midland Cogeneration Venture Limited Partnership, the Residential Customer Group, and Commission staff. Evidentiary hearings took place on May 21st and 27th. The record consists of 2,423 pages of transcript and 438 exhibits. This was the fourth evidentiary hearing conducted remotely due to COVID-19 mitigation measures. Following negotiations between the parties, CE Gas filed a settlement agreement on August 20th. The settlement agreement has been signed by all parties with the exception of Michigan State University, who filed a statement of non-objection. The agreement includes numerous adjustments to the company's originally filed position, highlighted by a reduction in revenue deficiency to $144 million, approximately 60% of its initial request. Other key terms of the agreement include an authorized return on common equity of 9.9%, approximately 60 basis points below its initial request. A capital structure of 52.05% equity, and to propose a plan to achieve a more balanced capital structure in its next rate case. An acceleration of the amortization schedule for its unprotected non-property component of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act deferred tax liability and pre-1993 deferred tax liability to occur between October 1st, 2021 and September 20th, 2022. This will be approximately $84.5 million. CE Gas's Enhanced Infrastructure Replacement Program, which replaces aging pipe with newer materials, will continue with increased spending of $100 million for 2020 and $150 million starting in 2021. CE Gas will also file with the Commission annual planning and performance reports related to the replacement program. Costs or investments related to the January 30th, 2019 fire at the Ray Compressor Station will not be approved or disallowed in this case. Consideration regarding rate recovery of related costs will be addressed in CE Gas's next general rate case once any insurance proceeds received by the company associated with these capital investments are known.
Thank you, Ms. Rusnick.
Sorry, I had to scroll down a little bit. The settlement agreement agrees to a modification in customer charges for several rate classes. CE Gas will hold a collaborative and work with stakeholders to address design of residential and commercial and industrial demand response pilot programs to be launched in 2021. Consumers Energy will make a one-time contribution of $2 million to the Heat and Warmth Fund and other non-affiliated nonprofits, with funds directed towards providing energy assistance to serve Consumers Energy customers. Lastly, CE Gas agrees it will not file its next general rate case earlier than December 1st, 2021. The order before you effectuates the terms of the uncontested settlement agreement and the subsequent rate changes on October 1st, 2020. Thank you.
Now I'll thank you, Ms. Resnick. Thank you for that. Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I move for the approval of the order in case number U-20650.
Commissioner Tallberg.
Second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Oh, yes, I do, Chairman. I just want to make a couple comments about the settlement and the work and just the unusual circumstances that took place as this case was being litigated. So first of all, I just really appreciate the hard work of all the parties, and in particular, the Administrative Law Judge, John Theuts, and MPSC staff in handling this case. It was litigated during a global pandemic with the Commission's physical offices closed. And so it was the second case with a fully remote evidentiary hearing that included live cross-examination of witnesses, including pretty extensive cross-examination of our staff witnesses. And there was a lot of effort that made this possible by the ALJ, the parties, and all of the extraordinary team at the MPSC, both technical staff involved with the case, as well as the IT team and others that figured out how to make this process work. And there was a lot of testimony on critical issues in this case that deal with the safety and reliability of consumers' natural gas system. That's the underpinning for the settlement that's before us today. And I just want to acknowledge that this was the first case with a long-term infrastructure and maintenance plan that was presented as part of a rate case, and it prioritizes investments for gas storage, transmission, and distribution system. And this provides a better risk-based approach to evaluating investments across the system, and also greater visibility to ensure that not only that we're maintaining safety, which is critical, but also long-term cost effectiveness for ratepayers. And this type of planning was called for in the Commission's statewide energy assessment prepared for Governor Whitmer. And I appreciate Consumers Energy being the first out of the gate to develop that plan and present it to us as part of this proceeding. I also just want to acknowledge the wide range of parties that came together on the resolution of the issues in this case. It's extensive settlement, and it ensures that there's timely safety investments and also strong accountability measures, particularly with the acceleration of the gas main replacement program. And then finally, just shifting gears a bit, I just want to acknowledge our gas safety staff that has resumed their inspections. They went through extraordinary efforts to learn from a whole host of different organizations, including the work of utilities and the unions, to set up protocols so that they could safely conduct construction and maintenance work on critical infrastructure in the state. And our staff worked with other state partners and for proper training and protocols so that our staff could be out there in the field and resume inspections as this work is being undertaken. And I just really appreciate their leadership and commitment to gas safety during these difficult times. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallberg. Any further discussion? We will now have a roll call vote on the motion to approve the order. Commissioner Phillips?
Aye.
Commissioner Tallberg?
Aye.
I also vote in favor of the motion. The motion carries by unanimous vote. The order in case number U-20650 is approved. The next item of business on today's agenda are presentations from Consumers Energy Company and DTE Energy Company regarding their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. As we've highlighted in previous meetings, this summer the Commission launched our own Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative. This initiative is led at the staff level by Shatina Jones as chair and Al Freeman as co-chair, with active involvement from a broad array of staff from across the Commission. One of our first activities was to ask our two largest utilities, Consumers Energy and DTE, to present their efforts in this area. We got a lot out of hearing about their approach, and so asked if they would share this presentation more publicly. And this morning, we'll hear from Diane Antishin, Vice President of Human Resources and Chief Diversity Officer at DTE Energy Company, and Monique Wells, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Senior Business Support Consultant at Consumers Energy, along with Reggie Hayes, Consumers Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. We had planned to hear from Angela Tompkins, Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer at Consumers Energy, but she is out today. We'll start with the presentation by Ms. Wells with support from Mr. Hayes from Consumers Energy. Ms. Wells, thank you for joining us this morning.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. Thanks to the Commission and to the community for the opportunity to talk a little bit about our journey with diversity, equity, and inclusion in Consumers Energy. And throughout this presentation, we hope to be able to give the community a little bit more of awareness around where we are and where we're going. So I'll go on ahead and get started with our journey. Our journey with diversity, equity, and inclusion, of course, with recent events, is key and important to kind of the life of our company, but it didn't start this year. It started way back in '85 when our WAP, our Women's Advisory Panel, was founded and it still thrives to this day. But in addition to the Women's Advisory Panel, we have a whole host of activities, initiatives that have not only begun, but have continued and been leveraged to start and to continue to build on that momentum. In 2017, we raised the pride flag at our Consumers Energy headquarters. In 2018, Patty Poppy signed the CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion pledge, and that was to rally businesses in support of not only diversity in the workplace, but how that workplace diversity then lends itself to moving us forward in the DE&I space, not only within the walls of consumers, but also within the constructs of the communities in which we serve. In 2019, our foundation donated over $1 million to diverse associations impacting communities of color. Just to name a few of these wonderful things that we've seen not only create momentum within consumers, but begin to impact our communities at large, leading to 2020. This year when our CEO, Patty Poppy, took a public stand against racism and called it a public health crisis, appointed our first Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer, Angela Tompkins, whom I'm proud to support, and continued rigor in our foundation to be sure to highlight and also donate over $100,000 in support of organizations fighting against social injustice. This is but a few things, but we thought it important to go through them very quickly and also talk a little bit about, what does the diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy look like as we roll it out through our company and as we impact our community and our shareholders. Moving through our DE&I strategy framework, just to give you some insight into, how do we see DE&I impacting our company? It's our desire to build and sustain a world-class and inclusive workforce. And that also includes our customers and how they experience our services, how we embed diversity, equity, and inclusion into not only the things that we do, the people that we serve, the commitments that we make to the community. We have 3 strategic pillars that enables us to be able to accomplish this and bring about these outcomes. It's our culture. How do our employees and our employee resource groups work to move DE&I into the fabric of the work that we do, the people that we are, and the internal culture that we create? How do our processes stand up to diversity, equity, and inclusion such that as we use our process to facilitate the completion of our work, not only are our people engaged in a culture that's saturated with diverse equitable and inclusive work practices, but then the customers, who actually experience that also can feel that and can recognize that that's being embedded in the fabric of the work that we do. And most of all, our talent, our people. How are we contributing to the whole employee experience? Again, how are we attracting and hiring and retaining? How do we recognize and promote and develop the very people that we want to be the lifeblood of this strategy, and that we want to create standardized processes that reflect a DE&I emphasis, ultimately impacting our culture, the communities that we serve, our shareholders, and so forth. We thought it important to add the dimensions of diversity because it's important to understand that this is just not restricted to ethnicity and gender. There are so many multifaceted ways in which we want to engage with our people and our communities, but there's a whole host of differences that we collectively bring together in the communities that we serve, the people that work for our company. When we do that and acknowledge that in an equitable fashion, then we're able to create a culture of inclusion where people can bring differences, find equity, find a common place of contribution and acceptance, and ultimately contribute to belonging. And in those spaces, there's no limit to what we can do and what we can accomplish together. Moving right along to diversity, equity, and inclusion, specific to our processes, we thought it important to understand that there's a whole host of processes that are impacted by equity and inclusion and understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We understand that the NPSC's recent increase in the use of stakeholder work groups and collaboratives, they have also facilitated inclusivity and conversations, open dialogue with the diverse communities in which we serve. So our strategy, it's people-centered, but at the heart of it, it's how do we take what is manifested within the walls of our company? How do we impact our customers, impact our communities, impact the people in which we serve, such that they also have a hand in what it is that we're trying to deploy in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's our employee experience, first of all, making sure that our people are touched with an awareness of how important they are to the strategic outcomes of consumers' energy, how we volunteer and show up in our communities, and the multifaceted and very diverse communities in which we serve. How do we use our understandings, our abilities to speak to one another and understand and agree, to listen, to shape our political activities and the face that we have and space that we have in the community? That also means that our communications are impacted. Key social issues, how are our customers and our coworkers both receiving and understanding and hearing our voice? And then it extends itself through our supply chain, how we attract vendors, which vendors we do business with, and the expectations and outcomes that we have of those vendors, but also the diversity of opportunities that we have to connect with vendors of all diverse backgrounds, our philanthropy, and how it is that we, for example, impact social injustice. How do we impact the needs of our communities through our giving? How do we diversify who it is that we help and who it is that we run to with aid in the hour of their greatest need? Which also brings into bear our customer interactions and our community engagement. So just wanted to take a minute to just walk through how it is that we see these processes and how important and key diversity, equity, and inclusion is in maximizing our impact. Moving on to our actions. So, as we set these goals, these very strategic goals, as we line out a plan to be able to impact our workspaces and then our communities, our customers, our shareholders, that has to manifest itself into actions. And so we just thought to include several. We've had leadership training opportunities. There's a book club facilitated with our senior officers and our officer teams around how to be an anti-racist by Ibram Kendi, to talk about and to allow to surface some of the understandings that book reveals, but how those understandings could be impacted or implicated in how we serve our customers, how we serve our employees, how we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion at the heights of leadership within the company. We also distributed an implicit bias test. It was personal, confidential, but coworkers had the ability to assess themselves, to understand where their biases may be, so that we can start a discussion around how bias can show up in us personally, and then potentially in how we work and have coworker relationships, and ultimately in the work that we do. What that facilitated is a greater need and desire for conversations within our company about race. These were not easy conversations, but we are getting comfortable in our discomfort and talking about the things that we know our coworkers are facing and bringing to work with them every day and experiencing when they leave work and when they're at home with their families, and recognizing the need to be able to voice and have a voice in those spaces, which brings us to something we've implemented in addition to physical safety, is to understand that there's emotional and psychological safety there as well. So we have a standard process where we'll begin each meeting with an understanding of inclusive guidelines for the meeting, how to keep one another safe, both emotional and psychologically during the meeting, and to be mindful of the feelings of others, but be open and accepting to dialogue with the ultimate goal of respect and caring. And it's had a profound impact. To continue to do those efforts, we wanted to engage our employees in continued learning. So there's some exercises that we've engaged in, like the word of the month, and we've taken very basic and fundamental words like diversity, like equity, like inclusion, right? We know there's a whole host of other difficult and very complex words like microaggressions and intersectionality, but we thought it important to ground ourselves fundamentally in what those words mean. So we took time for that, and there's a word each month and activities associated with it. And then we have open office hours that allows our coworkers to bring questions and comments to the diversity, equity, and inclusion team in a group format, or they have the opportunity to do one-on-one sessions that are completely private and confidential. How do you have a space to bring some difficult questions about things that you know are happening within the workspace, but have the safety to ask questions in a non-threatening way, where you understand it's okay to not say it right or get it right? And so through that, we've seen a tremendous amount of engagement. We've also put these, some of the things I've talked about today, up on our DE&I intranet site, where we have resources and FAQs to assist. And then lastly, we thought it very important that the union have representation and these discussions, and that there be a concerted partnership between our unions, our corporate functions, that we're seeing and hearing from the field what's happening. And that's being translated to the day-to-day business and some of the corporate functions, and that we're taking that together and understanding how to increase not only the connections of our coworkers, but connect each to our DE&I grassroots efforts. So now I'll move along to our allocation summary. And so, we've had several very, stake in the ground moments where we as a company have made decisions that we will have financial commitments related to DE&I. to show that where our treasure is, our heart is also, right? And so two specific areas, our internal and our external activities, but internally over the past 3 years, we have been very dedicated to establishing not only our team to support DE&I, which is the Inclusion and Strategic Sourcing team, but our employee resource groups. Like I said in the first slide, we've started that way back in 1985, but through continued momentum building and with recent events, we've really moved those employee resource groups to places of leadership and action in supporting what the company needs, being a voice for the different parts and pieces of our company. And those employee resource groups have participants that not only participate in recruiting events and conferences, but they are leading and facilitating discussions about difficult topics like race. And so that has been integral to our internal efforts to move DE&I forward, but our external efforts are equally as important. We spent over $200 million per year in aggregate supporting our supply chain and our supply chain and our treasury efforts. And as mentioned before, the CE Foundation has just been really working to make sure that we are listening to the voices of those that need to be heard in our communities with respect to DE&I. And collectively through supply chain, treasury, and CE Foundation, we are making a concerted effort to put that stake in the ground that this is how we will show up externally, and that what happens in the walls of our company will just be a momentum builder, and that our customers, our shareholders will experience that same focus on DE&I effort, such that it starts to impact and have a broad-based outcome where DE&I really is in the lifeblood of who we are and what we do and how we relate to our community and our coworkers. Finally, I did want to take a minute and talk about some of our external awards. Why is this important? Of course, we have a very fundamental approach and reason why we do what we do, and it starts with our people. It starts with our shareholders, the communities in which we serve, but the icing on the cake is when others begin to recognize who you are and what you do. And we're proud to say that over the years we've been recognized by Ernst & Young and by Forbes, and you see others represented here. And in 2020, also recognized by Forbes as the best employer for women in the utility sector. We're really proud of this, right? This is an opportunity for us to see that our efforts and our impact is visible. And it's showing us that what we're doing at a very fundamental and grassroots place within our organization is being seen and realized externally, not only by stakeholders who are watching, but the communities in which we serve. So thank you again for the opportunity to come and talk more about our DE&I efforts, and we look forward to more and further communication in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. That was very informative, and I appreciate your presentation and also your willingness to do it on such short notice. It was great to sort of have the overview captured, and I will say that one of the things I took away from the briefing that was done for the staff at the Commission was that consumers' approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts isn't some other thing that is sort of you do the main work and then you've got these considerations sort of someplace else, but they're interwoven into the core of the business and the strategy. And as we continue on our journey at the Commission, that's something that I certainly want to replicate. I see these as not ancillary, but core to the central mission of the Commission, and that is one of the things that I took away. I will now sort of move over to introduce Diane Antishin, who's the Vice President of Human Resources and the Chief Diversity Officer at DTE Energy Company. Ms. Antishin, thank you for being here. I enjoyed the overview that we got internally, and I appreciate your willingness to share it more publicly.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner Scripps. Can you hear me okay? And can you see my screen?
I can. We're all good.
That's a great start. Thank you also to our other commissioners, Commissioner Phillips and Commissioner Tallberg, for having DTE here today to join the meeting, and hello to the members of the public that are joining. I wanted to mention real quick, Monique, fantastic presentation. I think Consumers Energy does a remarkable job in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And frankly, we benefit because we push each other, we share learnings, and we become better because of each other's commitment to this area. So I'm really excited today to have the opportunity to share information about DTE's commitment and our progress in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'll just start by saying a little bit about myself. Personally, for me, my passion and commitment to this work runs very deep. I'm incredibly grateful to lead this work at DTE because for me, simply put, this work is an expression of love. And frankly, when in corporate America do we get a chance to talk about love? Like never, right? But we all know that when we love someone, we want that person to thrive. And diversity, equity, and inclusion helps us to translate that ability to thrive to our coworkers and to our communities. So before digging in, I'll highlight 3 key takeaways that I'd like to leave with everyone today. First and foremost, I want to mention that what I'll be describing to you in terms of our work is a journey. It's not work that has a beginning or an end, like an energy-related project or a particular community investment. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it's about creating a thriving organizational culture and leading positive change in our communities, it's ever-evolving work and it's continuous work. The second key takeaway kind of relates back to my first point, and I want to emphasize that while this work is ongoing, it is not, as some might describe it, soft work in an organization or work that does not have business rigor. We at DTE have clearly articulated this as a top priority in our company, and we have a well-defined multi-year strategy with timing, tactics, and actions. And we have a very clear oversight and governance structure all the way up to our CEO to ensure our progress. For anyone who may think that this is soft work, let me disavow you of that belief right off the bat. This is some of the hardest, frankly, most challenging work that a company can take on. To drive meaningful change, it requires the full alignment of leadership and a well-defined strategy. The third key message that I want to leave you with is that I'm incredibly proud of what we've accomplished as a company. We've deepened our DEI work in profound ways over the past 5 years, and we've taken bold action as a company in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. And as Monique had shared in the consumers presentation, we also are being recognized as a leading company for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is wonderful. So before getting into the detailed content of my presentation, as the saying goes, a picture says 1,000 words. And with that in mind, I'd like to share with all of you a brief video. And here it is, sorry, that I think helps demonstrate DTE's commitment to this space. Oh, I'm sorry. Now I need to click on the audio button, which for some reason is not showing. It was showing earlier. Yeah, it's kind of disappeared on my screen. I think
we heard it. If you want
to. Oh, you were hearing it. Okay, well then it was already clicked. Thank you. I'll just start it then.
It is now muted for some reason.
All right, well, you can get a little bit of a sense from the diagram there. I knew it was a little bit iffy to try it, and I had trialed it once, but it apparently does not want to work for us, so we'll just move on. It's a great video, by the way, and if anybody wants to see it, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to send a link. I just want to describe here a little bit about our journey and kind of how DTE began to recharge its efforts in diversity, equity, and inclusion dating back to 2015. At that point in 2015, we named a Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the company. And we began to really redefine our current state and identify gaps according to best practices. We also recharged and refocused aspects of our diversity, equity, and inclusion programming, including our employee resource groups. We call them our energy groups at DTE Energy, so that they had a clear charter, business plan, and metrics all aligned to the strategic priorities of the company. And presently, I would say we're in our third phase of this journey, where we define it as diversity, equity, and inclusion thriving as a natural way of being at DTE. You can feel it and you can see it when you engage with DTE employees. So this is kind of our trajectory and our journey that we've been on. And as we look ahead, we kind of view our diversity, equity, and inclusion roadmap through the lens of this particular model by Berzin by Deloitte, and really defining our maturity at this stage is in the area of level 3. And the way to distinguish that is to look and to say, okay, what does a level 1 of maturity in diversity, equity, and inclusion look like? And this is largely a company where you would see diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts being owned from a compliance perspective, maybe led by legal or the HR department. Level 2 is a foundational level or programmatic level of diversity, equity, and inclusion, where you have policies, you have trainings, you have unconscious bias training, for example, but still diversity and inclusion efforts mostly owned by the HR organization. And this is really the phase that we're in, as I mentioned, level 3, where we have leader-owned diversity and inclusion, where leaders all perceive and understand their role in driving diversity, equity, and inclusion within a company. And leaders are creating a pull for information and tools from our diversity and inclusion team. In fact, we at DTE have established performance expectations for all directors and above in our company as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is, again, driving powerful change throughout the enterprise. But we know, as I mentioned earlier, that we still have more work to do. And reaching the next level of a fully inclusive culture, level 4 maturity, where everyone owns diversity, equity, and inclusion, is really where we're focused. As I mentioned, having business rigor in our approach and knowing what great looks like and what our gaps are to work on is a key element to DTE's approach. This single slide is a compilation of thousands of rows of data and analysis that we've gathered from benchmark studies to help hone and refine our DEI strategy at DTE. Where you see the green check marks, we rank high or very high on the best-in-class markers for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when you see the target areas, we know that we have additional gaps to close and we have specific actions identified to do so. So just taking one area, for example, area number 2, diversity, equity, and inclusion learning and education. So for many decades, DTE has had a full set of course offerings, 16 plus courses that our employees are encouraged to take and have access to at any point in time. But we know that best-in-class companies offer a multi-year learning curriculum that is differentiated based on job role within the company. And that is what we're working, for example, in this area to develop right now, to say that, you know, as an individual contributor, this is the learning that you need to have. As a leader, you need this level of learning. And as an executive in the company or a higher level leader, this is the curriculum that you'll have. So we're working on closing gaps in all of these areas. Moving on, the Commission had asked us as part of the presentation to take a moment to describe DTE's response to the recent events of racial injustice and violence that have gripped our country and frankly the world. And from my perspective, we've accomplished a great deal in a very short period of time. I'll just highlight a few of these actions. It really began on May 30th, where Jerry Norcia, our CEO, and I issued a statement declaring our recommitment to stand against injustice and racism. Then we began very widespread listening forums with Black employees from all across the company as a basis to further develop our near-term and longer-term response actions. We activated leaders from all across the company to engage in courageous conversations with their teams. And we took another bold step by declaring Juneteenth as a day for all DTE employees to listen, learn, heal, and act. I'll just say that, you know, we're deepening our learnings within the organization. We have leaders who are exploring the 3 books that are shown on the screen here, and we've had facilitated conversations at the executive level and amongst different levels of leadership on the learnings from those materials. As I mentioned earlier, our governance structure regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion is well positioned to achieve our aspiration. It's led by our People Committee, our Engagement, Safety, and Training Committee, that establishes our annual priorities and plans for accomplishing those priorities. And then we have a new Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Executive Steering Committee that was recently established to work more deeply on issues of inclusion, racism, and systemic injustice. From there, we have our Inclusion and Diversity Oversight Committee, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program Offices, and we have our 9 employee resource groups, our Abilities in Motion AIM group, our REACH, which is our Black employee group, SURGE, our Young Professional group, EMEA, our Asian and Middle Eastern American group, our Power of Pride employee resource group, SOMOS, which is our Hispanic and Latin American employee group, family, veterans, and our women of DTE. And all of these energy groups, as we refer to them, help to drive our DEI efforts at a grassroots level. Moving on to the area of supplier diversity, DTE's strong commitment to supplier diversity dates back over 10 years, frankly, to the recession in 2008 and 09, where we made a commitment to increase local supplier spend to drive economic progress. As you can see from the charts on the left, our diverse supplier spend has grown by 218% over the previous 9 years. And our diversity spend as a percentage of our total spend has grown by 19% over approximately the same period of time. So we obviously have a long history of growing and partnering with diverse suppliers. And as you can see, our efforts are being recognized nationally through the Supplier Diversity Award that's described there. Also just mention a couple ways that we activate. We host annual events. These are just a few of them. Our Supplier Immersion Day Summit hosted for diverse suppliers. We have a Shark Tank type showcase event in which we award DTE work to diverse and local suppliers. And we've also partnered with a number of downtown Detroit employers to host career fairs to connect job seekers, to in-demand work. Just a couple last areas that I'd like to cover. We have a tremendous commitment to creating equity through employment opportunities for young people and being a catalyst for educational attainment in our communities. Our student programs at DTE are a huge area of focus, and this year, despite the challenges of COVID, I'm very proud to say that we are one of very few companies that honored its commitments to all of our summer students coming into the company. Took a lot of out-of-the-box thinking, but we were able to pull off a virtual work experience that was fundamentally still as valuable and transformative as our in-person student experiences. And DTE has been a leader in helping to close the digital divide in the city of Detroit by providing devices and internet service and leading the effort to supply students, over 51,000 students in the city, with access to technology to be able to continue to successfully pursue their K through 12 education needs. In the interest of time, I'll just make a quick mention of this slide. As I mentioned earlier, we've been diving deeply into courageous conversations on topics such as white privilege. And as part of that, several business units are going much deeper into Amy Hunter's research on unlucky zip codes. And really, those discussions are providing a powerful lens on how we provide equitable access to energy assistance and customer programs with the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm going to close similar to Monique did in terms of just highlighting some of the recognitions that DTE has received in terms of being a leading company for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We rank number 3 on Diversity Inc.'s top utility companies for diversity list. We've been named one of the top 50 most community-minded companies in the country by Civic 50. And many years running now, we've been named a gold level veteran-friendly employer by the Michigan Veteran Affairs Agency. So I guess just in closing, again, I really am proud of the journey and the accomplishments that DTE has had. Our journey is not complete, but our work is accelerating rapidly. And I believe and I know that DTE is truly making a positive difference internal for our employees and externally in our communities. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments.
Thank you. Ms. Antishin, that was just incredibly helpful, and appreciate your willingness to sort of bring that to the commission and our staff as we begin, and to be a partner in these efforts, and your willingness to share it publicly. Commissioners Phillips or Talbert, do you have any questions? I know that Ms. Wells is also still on.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Monique and Diane, for your presentations. I do just have a brief comment. And again, I thank both of you and your teams for continuing to provide materials and guidance to the Commission as we continue our journey in discussing and implementing DEI efforts at the Commission. I also want to take particular note, Monique, of your comment about becoming comfortable in your discomfort. That is certainly something that we've experienced, and we continue to wrestle with that beautiful discomfort during our conversations at the Commission. I just briefly want to say your companies not only have a well-recognized and significant economic and employment impact here in the state of Michigan, but you also have an important role on the public health and the social fabric of our communities throughout the state. So I thank you for your continued leadership statewide and nationally in response to not only the COVID-19 pandemic, but also in response to the renewed interest and frankly, the need to discuss racism and other forms of deeply rooted discrimination in our country. So thank you once again, and we look forward to continue to work with you during this difficult time.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks.
I just have a couple questions, I guess. One, you know, at the Commission, we're a small organization of like 200 people, and we had volunteers that are participating in this effort to identify both changes internally at the Commission, but also externally, including our role as regulators in the telecommunications and energy industries, and the impact that the Commission can have in that regard related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, you know, we're able, with the number of participants, to literally have every person share their personal stories, and it builds this bond and connection and understanding by sharing those experiences. And I'm curious, with such large organizations, like how, you know, the approaches you take in trying to facilitate those conversations. Monique, you talked about on your slides that you had company-wide dialogues, and I don't know if that's been done remotely and how that's gone, but also I've seen on social media DTE posting reflections of your staff to the killings that have occurred and the state of play that we're facing in our nation today. And so just kind of curious, like how you're able, with such a large organization, you've got these employee resource groups, but bringing, you know, in the importance of that, you know, people sharing their stories.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead, Diane, and just add a couple comments. So first of all, you are correct in having conversations and discussions with organizations as large as ours. It's important to make sure that you are creating an environment and a safe space that allows people to be able to share. And you're right, you have to be strategic with that. But what our company has found great success in is encouraging our leaders to lead those efforts and creating those safe spaces for their work groups. And so we've had things like a company-wide town hall. Reggie Hayes was a phenomenal facilitator there, and we had some guest speakers come in. And so we were able to get you know, literally thousands of employees to virtually participate in a town hall. But if you take that into the small microcosm of the organization, what you get is these little pods. and you have conversations. And I'm not saying that they all are very cheery conversations. You know, we have the opportunity for people to put questions in the chat, and they're also able to do that. But at the same time is, you know, organization by organization, you can facilitate the creation of a safe space for discussions to take place. And we have found success in that.
Yeah, I think Monique hit it right on the mark. I think it is all about leaders setting the tone. And we've provided resources for, I mean, we've modeled how that conversation can happen through our CEO, through other executives who have led those conversations. And we've provided tools to leaders to help, you know, demonstrate kind of the words that work in demonstrating vulnerability and creating that safe space where people can share transparently and honestly and openly. And so those tools, the modeling of leadership behaviors, I think is really key to helping to create that emotional safety, which is absolutely paramount to having real conversations.
Oh, you went on mute.
Yeah.
Diane.
No, I know I've got a little puppy in the background because he was wanting to join the conversation.
I feel like it's right here with us. It's okay.
So really those were the thoughts that I did want to share in terms of leadership, modeling behaviors and providing tools and words that work in this space, being able to demonstrate vulnerability to create that safety so people can share openly their perspectives and their experiences.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both again for your willingness to share and to publicly present. I know that you both presented, I mean, this is a live meeting that we also have video recorded, but I also know that we have access to your presentations. And so we'll be including those on our website with this, so with the meeting materials for members of the public who want to see them, including seeing the video. Hopefully we can get it to work better as people sort of click on the actual link. But I appreciate your willingness to share your leadership in this area. I think that we have a lot to learn from you and appreciate you being resources to us as we begin our journey and make sort of continue to sort of uplift the mission of serving all of Michigan in the way that we do. So, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have now reached the time on the agenda reserved for members of the public to address the Commission. Again, if you would like to make a comment and have access to the Teams live stream Q&A on your computer, please enter your name and your comment will then be read aloud to the Commissioners. This feature is available on the right-hand side of the control bar next to the mute button. As a reminder, the Q&A feature is intended for public comments directed to the Commission and not to engage with other participants or respond to their comments. After taking any comments through this feature, we'll open up the phone line for those who called into the meeting and would like to address the Commission verbally. If you want to be queued up for verbal comments, please enter your name in the live stream Q&A feature and indicate that you wish to make a verbal comment, but please do not include your written comment as this will avoid duplication. I will first call on those names. I will call on these names in the order received. After hearing from those individuals listed in the Q&A, we will ask if there are any comments from individuals who are on the phone but not utilizing the online Q&A feature. Please note that you can only make verbal comments by calling into the meeting. When it is your turn to speak, press *6 on your phone to unmute. As a reminder, this public comment period is for commissioners to listen to comments and concerns and not to address specific questions. When providing comment, please indicate your name or where you live if you're willing to share so that we have that for our records. And please limit comments to one per person and keep them brief, no longer than 3 minutes, so that we have a chance to hear from all who would like to comment. Ms. Cole, I believe you are on deck to read any comments that we've received through the Q&A feature. Do we have any in the Q&A feature?
At this time, Chair Scripps, there are no comments queued up in the Q&A feature.
Excellent. Is there anybody in the Q&A feature who has expressed an interest in speaking?
Not at this time.
Okay. We will now turn to anybody who is on the phone but was not able to put their name into the Q&A feature. Is there anybody on the phone that is interested in making public comment this morning? Again, it's *6 to unmute. We'll give this a couple of seconds to see if there is. Again, *6 to unmute if you're interested in making public comment. Hearing none, we will close public comment. Again, there are opportunities to email us directly and obviously always opportunities to add comments to ongoing dockets through the Executive Secretary's office. A few announcements before we close. First, I'm pleased to note that the state has convened a new dam safety task force in the wake of the failures in May of the Sanford and Edenville dams, and we held our first meeting on Tuesday. I will be representing the Commission on the task force, which includes representatives from across state government and indeed a broad range of expertise from across the state. The task force is charged with evaluating the statutory structure, budget, and program design of the Water Resources Division Dam Safety Program housed in the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, the adequacy of Michigan's dam safety standards, and the level of investment needed in Michigan's dam infrastructure. Its work will culminate in a report to Governor Whitmer and the legislature summarizing our findings and recommending regulatory, financial, and programmatic improvements to help ensure Michigan dams are appropriately maintained, operated, and overseen to protect Michigan residents and aquatic resources. The next meeting of the task force is October 1st, 2020 at 10 a.m. and will be held using Microsoft Teams. More information on the task force, its membership, and meeting details can be found at michigan.gov/MyDamSafetyTaskForce, MI Dam Safety Task Force.
Hello?
I believe, yes, is there somebody who's interested in making public comment?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry that I couldn't get on when you called for public comments.
Please go ahead, sir, and can you start with your name and where you're calling from?
Sure. My name is Michael Lane. I'm calling from Farmington Hills, Michigan. And I apologize, I don't have the eloquence or vocabulary of the previous speakers, and I'm really not a polished public speaker, so I hope you'll grant me the latitude in light of that. My problem is far less esoteric, far more a basic problem. I filed a complaint with the MPSC about the numerous power outages I've experienced in my neighborhood. That would be against DTE. And I've had trouble communicating with them. The filing was made on July 29th and was acknowledged, received. But trying to get feedback from them on how the problem is progressing, I simply am unable to. I received an email from DTE, no logo on the page, although it is a DTE mailing email address that invites me to, and I put this in quotes, please feel free to reach out to me directly, end quote. But there's no signature with whom to speak, and the phone number that I've been given goes to voicemail, and I've never received a response after leaving messages. I've received phone calls from representatives of DTE telling me that I will be contacted, and I'm not contacted. One response I got from the MPSC was that DTE had been contacted on my behalf and that they were going to complete some tree trimming work, and that's fine. Unfortunately, in my subdivision, only the outside ring of homes is serviced by overhead lines. On the inside, we're all underground and still experiencing power outages. Now, I'm not complaining about power outages that occur during severe weather. I understand that. My complaint is about the power outages that occur recurrently under clear or partly cloudy skies when it's warm and not a lot of breeze. So there's something else going on. I've attempted to speak with DTE in order to get a confirmation on the number and duration of power outages to see if they match up with my list, and I'm unable to get that information from DTE. One young woman who answered the telephone, the 877-47-74747 number, said she put together an email for me with the list of power outages, and that outgoing email was placed in the outgoing email queue. It never arrived. More frustration. To obtain an energy credit on the MPSC web page, it says that 7 interruptions in a 12-month period qualify for an energy credit. Yet on the DTE web page, under the same heading, it says 8 interruptions. That certainly is confusing. Also goes on to suggest that I need to record the date and time of each outage, record when the company was notified of the outage and how the company was notified, and that I should document when the service was restored. Maybe in the old days, today with the smart meters, that information should be available to the public, or certainly to the individual customer. Because, for instance, if I'm at home and the power goes out and it doesn't come back on shortly, I'm probably not going to hang around to know when the power comes back on. Or if I come home to a power outage, I won't know when that power outage started.
Mr. Lane, I wanted to make sure that we gave you sufficient time, and in fact have given 4.5 minutes. So a minute and a half more.
I have about another. Okay, fine. What would I like to see? Thank you, by the way. I'd like to see better proactive measures about tree trimming, which did occur after the squeaky wheel got the grease. I shouldn't need to be a squeaky wheel. I'd like to see the clarification between the 7 events and 8 events published on the 2 different web pages. I'd like to see a shift of responsibility, not to the customer, but to DTE to record and report the outages. It should be available upon request by the customer. And I'm certain it's expensive to keep on-call crews and to do preventive maintenance, but it's got to be a lot more expensive not to be able to charge for electricity that hasn't been delivered during a power outage. And that's my comment, and I'd be looking forward to hear what you have to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. So my understanding is that you have already filed a complaint with the Commission office. If I understood that wrong, you can do so by calling our call center at 800-292-9555. There's also filed. Okay, excellent. I will follow up with our customer assistance division.
Would you like a case number? Would you like a case number?
Sure. Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Lane. I appreciate you joining us for the meeting and sharing this with us.
Thank you.
The other announcement that I have this morning is that Executive Order 2020-177 extended the state of emergency through October 1st, 2020. Under the terms of the executive order, public meetings such as this are to be held virtually for 28 days past the expiration of the state of emergency, meaning that the first in-person meeting is currently our meeting scheduled for November 19th, 2020. This is obviously subject to any further extensions of the state of emergency. We have a number of additional meetings between now and November 19th, 2020, and those will continue to be held on this Microsoft Teams platform. And obviously the work goes on even as we continue to do it remotely. Commissioner Phillips, I believe you also had an announcement this morning.
Yes, just one brief comment. In light of many students returning back to school, either in person or remotely over the past several weeks, the Commission wishes to once again highlight and encourage families who lack internet service or sufficient broadband speeds to utilize the Wi-Fi hotspots map recently released by the MPSC in partnership with Connect Michigan, the Michigan Department of Management and Budget, Libraries of Michigan, Michigan Department of Education, and the Office of the Lieutenant Governor. To date, we have more than 300 Wi-Fi hotspots locations that are made available on this map. Those locations are in parking lots of public schools, libraries, and other sites across the state of Michigan, including the UP. These resources, most importantly, can be accessed for free and allow families to limit their risk of exposure and transmission of COVID-19 while they're accessing these critical resources. So we recognize that this is an interim step and that increased access and adoption of broadband connectivity must continue to be pursued. But we intend for this resource to support the 28% of Michigan students who currently live in homes without internet access, and these resources can support them as they meet their virtual needs. So thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and also for your continued leadership at both the state and national level on broadband expansion issues. We're lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Any additional announcements? With that, that concludes today's meeting. The next regular commission meeting is scheduled for September 24th, 2020 at 1:30 p.m. As mentioned, in light of the recent extension of the state of emergency, the meeting will be held remotely by video conference. Commissioner Phillips, do you have a motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Chairman. I move to adjourn today's meeting.
Commissioner Tallberg?
Second.
We will now have a roll call vote on the motion to adjourn the meeting. Commissioner Phillips?
Aye.
Commissioner Tallberg?
Aye.
I also vote in favor of the motion. The motion carries by unanimous vote. The meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.